Imagine you go to your doctor and instead of just prescribing medication and like rushing you out of their office, they start talking about grounding in your own anatomy and encouraging you to rethink your own reality. Weird, right? Okay. So Elizabeth Wisniewski is a chiropractor, but she believes in the power of somatic healing because she has seen it over and over in her practice. So let's see if all of these somatic practices can come help us make our own reality because yes, please. Get excited because you can find calm in your chaotic life. That voice that says it's impossible is total mind BS. I would love to know what is the number one takeaway that you are hoping our audience is going to get from our chat today?
To follow your embodied wisdom, that inherent knowledge and intuition. That's my biggest thing. So it's like within somatics, it's like that yes that comes from your soul, from through your heart space, and you just feel it in every cell.
Okay. Now, I'm super curious about your journey as you trained as a chiropractor. Was that concept of following your own soul and listening to your body integrated into that training?
No, not at all. And within the actual education, no. I mean, there are some people where they're like, I'm from a lineage of chiropractors, but it really wasn't. But for me, on a personal level, it was because I lost most of my eyesight after 30 surgeries. So for me, it was, but I couldn't name that at the time until I got my second doctorate in the depth psych and somatics.
There is a doctorate in somatics?
Yeah, yep, depth psychology and somatics. And so that's why I have two. I have my doctor of chiropractic and a PhD.
Fabulous. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So, tell me about how you support your clients using this combination of chiropractic support as well as the psychology and the somatic work.
Sure. So, first, being in my practice is a really safe and sacred trauma-informed space. And I name that explicitly at the beginning of all of my appointments, whether it's with a newborn baby or preconception, prenatal, postpartum, because my focus is the perinatal continuum. So, everything around birth and pregnancy. And part of somatics for me and grounding into that trauma-informed and the depth psychology aspect is then to say consent for me is ongoing. Consent can end at any time for any reason or for no reason at all, so that I'm attuning and having that coherence with my practice members and they feel safe in their body, because we're made up of 70 trillion cells. So I want to like tap into all of those cells and have coherence with them, but also to help their nervous systems to get out of hopefully fight or flight and drop into the parasympathetic rest and digest. So I'm constantly talking to them. And because I work around birth, I've done a lot of extra training in perinatal psychology. And I'll talk to newborn babies about their birth experience and the trauma they may have experienced while I gently adjust their spine. So it's highly integrated and one informs the other. The other thing I want to say about that is that as a doctor of chiropractic, we work with the body, but as I moved through my master's to PhD program in depth psychology and somatics, I realized the difference between the body and the soma. And so an example would be when you pass away, your body's still here on earth in this three-dimensional space, but your soma's not. So soma has that kind of like soul fragment or spiritual connection, and it's the lived experience of the body. So I'm always tapping into that.
Wow, that is completely revolutionary to me. I have not heard somebody talk about soma in that way. So tell me more about that. Tell me what that lived experience in the body, how it manifests, how it, shows up in your clients, and how you tap into that.
Sure. So breaking down somatics as the lived experience of the body from a first person perspective, we're going to look at this from three pillars. The first being interoceptive awareness of noticing what's going on inside your body. So it's your breath, maybe your heartbeat, maybe some pain in your body. So I certainly have people coming into my practice in pregnancy saying, I'm noticing this low back pain. And so then we'll tap in to that. And then the next part of somatics is going to be exteroceptive awareness of what's going on around you? What are you noticing in your environment that may be informing or influencing your somatic experience? Maybe it's making you distracted. So again, an example for my practice would be, let's say I have like a child coming in who has some sensory processing disorders. I'm going to turn off the fan. I'm going to turn off the music. I'm not going to have any essential oils in there. I'm going to make it a really calm environment so that they can ground down and it's not activating that sympathetic fight or flight response. And just so that's the environment. So we have intero and exteroceptive awareness. And then finally, proprioception, which is where your body is in time and space. And we have proprioceptors in all of our joints and those tendons. And again, as a chiropractor, when I'm making an adjustment, whether it's manual or an instrument or just a gentle hold like I do on babies, we're influencing that and changing where that joint is in time and space from a neurological perspective.
Okay. So by tapping into all of those different sensory components, and then you mentioned trauma as well, combining that with past experience, with lived experience, what sort of results do you see that you don't think are typical of traditional chiropractic practice?
Well, people will start releasing and crying. I had a new practice member earlier this week, perinatal, who had a pregnancy loss. But she first came in and said, I had this miscarriage about halfway through my pregnancy. So we were able to reframe that and take the blame off of her and her body, that she's had this story looping that she did something wrong. She miscarried. And I was like, what if we reframe this as a pregnancy loss? Because if you didn't do anything wrong. And so that was a big shift. And then we took some breaths into that. And then to really ground that into her body and to integrate it, that's when I make an adjustment. And for her, it was behind her heart space. And so that mid-thoracic region. And so that's how it shows up. And then especially with birth, my dissertation work for my second doctorate was on unplanned cesarean birth. So there can be a lot of trauma within that. So I sit with people and witness their birth story. They tell me their story, and we'll go back into certain parts of it. And I'll be like, what do you notice right now? Where are you feeling that in your body? And as we go in, is there any image or word or symbol, maybe even archetype coming up that we can then work with from like an active imagination standpoint, which is very Jungian. Because the other part of my PhD is depth psychology, so it's based in Carl Jung's work. So I do longer appointments. I'm not one of those chiropractors that's cookie cutter where I'm gonna crack your spine and send you out the door. We're gonna really tap into your experience and spend more time together so I can understand where you're at. And then also for me, being a trauma-informed provider is giving really good referrals to co-manage cases so that we are acknowledging and recognizing, let's say, postpartum depression and anxiety immediately, and that person can get all the support they need.
I have chills. I mean, the idea of treating somebody that holistically, especially through such a transition and emotional period as pregnancy and childbirth and child loss, I'm blown away. I wish that this was the common way. I wish this was the norm, that we would be treated from all of these different angles for so many different presentations of whatever we go through in our lives. So I'm super curious if somebody is watching this and they're like, yes, I want to get started, but I'm not in your area. I can't go, into your clinic. How would you suggest that they start to work through all of this stress and all of, anything that's happening perinatally to help them get through the period?
Right. So if most providers postpartum will administer some questionnaires. So if you've been diagnosed with, let's say, like PMAD, some sort of postpartum depression, anxiety disorder, definitely find a psychotherapist, somebody who's PH, we'll come back to that, PM. So it's a special certification. Please
What does
edit.
it mean?
I'll have to look it up and get back to you.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot or anything, but
Yeah, it was a perinatal mental health certification, or it's something within that.
okay.
PMHC, perinatal mental health certificate. And that's through Postpartum Support International. So I have PSI, their information at the bottom of my webpage, because they have a 24-hour English and Spanish warm line you can call or text. So it's really important to feel supported. The other thing you want to do is look International Chiropractic Pediatric Association, ICPA. You can look up by zip code for a doctor of chiropractic who's either perinatal certified like I am, or pediatric certified. That doesn't mean most of them don't have a PhD in depth psychology like I do, and I don't think any of them do, but you're going to be on the right track and they're going to have good resources. I'm in Southern California and I'm expanding my offerings to do virtual. I'm a somatic movement therapist to process birth stories. So I'm going to have new offerings soon that are virtual so people can work with me in that kind of coaching, that perspective, using my somatic movement therapist certification as well. So there's lots of opportunity, but tapping into your local resources, there's always birth worker groups, and I'm a part of a few in this area that I'm in Ventura, Santa Barbara area in Southern California. So there's lots of opportunities, and I think it's really important because often our society will say, okay, your baby has 10 fingers and 10 toes. The baby seems fine. Just be happy with that. And so then we push down the trauma of our birth experience where maybe there was obstetric violence or obstetric racism, disrespect, all of that, and it's not acknowledged. And that's not okay, because if you have a subsequent birth, that might come up in labor. So I'll have my practice members even write or draw or dance out their stories from that previous birth experience, so they're not holding it in their body going into this next birthing experience.
Wow. I was just going to ask you about somatic movement therapy, but I think you just described it.
Yeah, and it's expansive and it's ever growing because somatics is a big topic right now, and I'm seeing it pop up everywhere within yoga and mindfulness. And so that's why I like to define it with those three pillars and the lived experience from that first person perspective, because I think that's the easiest way to explain it. And that's kind of taps into it historically, going back to the mid 1970s when somatics was created and named that name.
So can you remind me of those three pillars again?
Yeah, the interoceptive, the exteroceptive, and the proprioception.
Ah, okay. Yes, that totally makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay, fantastic. So people can follow your adventures on Instagram. What's there for them?
Oh man, so many things. This month, actually, I've been posting everything about somatics. So I'm posting every day on my stories and just providing educational tools and resources. So it's not just about my practice. You'll see pictures pop up of me working with babies and pregnant people, but there's a lot there. Upcoming themes are on cesarean births. I'm going to share some more of my research that I had conducted in the past. So there's a different topic every month that's weaving together this intersection of depth psych, somatics, chiropractic, really holistic healthcare. So you can glean a lot from that as I'm constantly doing reels and lives and everything, answering questions.
Fantastic. So I am going to drop all of Dr. Wisniewski's links in the description so that you can find all the things that she has to offer. Follow her on her adventures. And before we sign off today, are there any last words that you want to share with our audience?
Trust your embodied wisdom. If your body, you get this yes, and you feel it from your soul, from your heart, go with it. I've done that. That's what's led me down the path of chiropractic and depth psychology after 30 eye surgeries, losing my physical eyesight, and stepping into this greater vision of using my hands and heart and third eye intuition. So follow that, because your body holds so much wisdom. And when I say every day my practices, you know your body better than any doctor ever will. So trust your body, your soma, and your experience.
That is absolutely beautiful. One more quick question. If somebody's like, yes, I want to, but I don't know how, what advice would you give for them to get started in trusting their internal wisdom?
I would start writing letters to your body, start keeping a journal, asking it questions, And it seems woo-woo, but when you tap in, you get these messages that come through you. And so the other part of it could be maybe you're not ready for that, having a dream journal and seeing what comes through from your psyche, bringing the unconscious conscious in your dream. And so I think journaling and writing about it, drawing it, it could be crayons, it could be whatever you want, but just start keeping a record of it. Maybe it's voice recordings, because you'll start learning. The last thing I want to add with that is Carl Jung talks about this tension of opposites. So, there's more than, it's more than two things that are possible, because we'll often be like, it's black or white, it's this or that. But when we hold that tension of opposites and we're uncomfortable and we're like waiting for this divine message or whatever it is to come through from our body, from our psyche, something eventually will emerge. So there's discomfort in there, and that's okay. Keep breathing, keep trusting the experience, because you will learn and grow from it over time.
Fantastic. That is beautiful advice. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your wisdom and this awesome approach that you take. I hope that lots of people are able to see their care a little bit differently because of this chat today. So thank you so much, Dr. Wisniewski. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.
What if self-care wasn't a dirty word? Hit subscribe and we'll see if we can make that happen. Dear body, aren't you just the most beautiful thing that ever existed? So soft and cuddly.